Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. It's your favorite history teacher back at you again with another historical video. And today we are actually going to talk about two of the big three, technically four dictators. So let's get into it. Um, there we go. So, chapter 10, lesson 2, the rise of dictatorial regimes. Let's get into it. That was your warm up. Objectives: we're going to identify instances of propaganda in fascist Italy, summarize the way Mussolini exploited the people's fears, and identify causes and effects of Stalin's plans of collectivization. All right, rise up. So, by 1939, the beginning of World War II, only two major European states, France and Britain, remained democratic. The Great Depression led to a loss of confidence in civic institutions and governments. Authoritarians, test question, took advantage of this disillusionment to gain political momentum and power. Italy, the Soviet Union, Germany, and many other European states adopted dictatorial regimes. They took both old and new forms. A new form of dictatorship was a modern totalitarian state. In a totalitarian state, the government aims to control the political, economic, social, intellectual, and cultural lives of its citizens. Totalitarian regimes push the central state's power far beyond what it had done in the past. These regimes wanted more than passive obedience. They wanted to conquer the minds and hearts of their subjects, and they achieved this goal through mass propaganda techniques and modern communications. Totalitarian states were led by a single leader and a single party. They rejected the ideal of limited government power and guarantee of individual freedoms. Individual freedoms were subordinated to the collective will of the masses as determined by the leader, and the masses were expected to be actively involved in achieving the state's goals. So no longer is it all about the Enlightenment, uh, freedom of speech, individual thinking. Yeah, no, these people, they wanted to control you. So, this is Hideki Tojo in Japan, obviously Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin. All right, the Moose. So, by the 1920s, Benito Mussolini set up the first European fascist movement in Italy. Mussolini actually began his political career as a socialist, but in 1919, he created a new political group, the Fascio di Combattimento. My Italian's off. League of Combat is what it translates to. And as a political philosophy, fascism glorifies the state above all individuals by emphasizing the need of a strong central government led by a dictatorial ruler. In a fascist state, the government controls the people and stifles the opposition. By 1922, Mussolini's movement was growing quickly. The middle class fear of socialism, communism, and disorder made the fascists increasingly attractive to many people. Mussolini knew that Italians were still angry over the failure to receive more land from the peace treaty, the whole reason Italy switched sides in World War I in the first place, and they weren't granted that land. So, of course, they're going to be a bit PO'd. He knew nationalism was a powerful force and demanded more land for Italy. He wanted to create a new Roman Empire, a new Roman lake of the Mediterranean. Touching the heartstrings of the former Roman Empire that started in Italy. Duh. Mussolini converted thousands of people to the fascist party with his nationalistic appeals. He was a great orator, a great speaker. 1922, Mussolini and the fascists threatened to march on Rome if they were not given power. Victor Emmanuel III. Oh, I need to change that. Not the second, the third. Sorry about it. Yeah, it's not the second. The second was his dad. Victor Emmanuel III, King of Italy, gave in and made Mussolini prime minister. Mussolini will use his position as prime minister to create a fascist dictatorship. He was made head of the government by the power to make laws, with the power to make laws by decree. The police were given unrestricted authority to arrest and jail anyone for either political or non-political crimes. 1926, the fascists outlawed all political parties in Italy and set up a secret police called Ovalle. By the end of the year, Mussolini ruled Italy as Il Duce, or the leader. So I give him the nickname the Moose, but he called himself Il Duce, the leader. That's the symbol of the fasces. So it's fascism doesn't really have like a definition, but this is the symbol of the fasces in Latin. It's like a bundle of sticks wrapped around an axe. So as you see all these like iterations of the fasces symbol, that's Mussolini and his secret police. More secret police. They call them the black shirts. And I don't know if that's touching the heartstrings of Italian unification, but remember when Giuseppe Garibaldi and his men took over the country, they were wearing red shirts. So maybe he's like, oh, well, they'll wear black shirts. Again, Mussolini, very pompous. All right. Believing that the fascist state should be totalitarian, Mussolini used various means to establish complete control over the Italian people. The secret police, the OVRA, watched citizens' political activities and enforced government policies. The Italian fascists also tried to exercise control over the media, including newspapers, radio, and film. This media would be used to spread propaganda like Mussolini is always right. Simple slogan used to mold Italians into a single-minded fascist community. Fascists also used organizations to promote the ideals of fascism. 1939, 66% of the population between ages 8 and 18 were members of fascist movement groups. These youth groups particularly focused on military activities and values. Remember, war is glorified in a fascist state. With these organizations, fascists hope to create a new nation of new Italians who are fit, disciplined, and war-loving. In practice, the fascists largely maintained traditional social attitudes, especially towards women. Fascists portrayed the family as the pillar of the state. As the foundation of the family, women were to be homemakers and mothers only. Mussolini said these roles were their natural and fundamental mission in life. Yikes. That's not going to age well. Mussolini attempted to place Italian industries and the economy under the control of the state. Keyword tried. He strengthened the Italian army, engaged in conflicts in Albania in Europe next door, and Libya and Ethiopia in Africa. Mussolini never achieved the degree of totalitarian control as seen as Hitler's Germany or Stalin's Soviet Union. The Italian Fascist Party did not completely destroy the country's old power structure. Mussolini's compromise with traditional institutions of Italy was evident in his dealings with the Catholic Church. It's called the Lateran Accords, February 1929. Mussolini recognized the sovereign independence of a small area of 109 acres within Rome called the Vatican City. The church has claimed this area since Italian unification in 1870, so it was no worry that Mussolini was going to do this. Mussolini's regime also recognized Catholicism as the sole religion of the state, and in return, the Catholic Church urged Italians to support the fascist regime, because there are still people who remain loyal to the Catholic Church, but not loyal to whoever was leading Italy. Remember, Italy was a hot mess before 1870. I don't speak Italian, but I could make up this thing. 1919 Bolshevism. Okay. Looks like despair. And then you have fascism. Look, we're all helping each other. There you go. Here's some more propaganda. They got some strong forearms. That's all I'm saying. Here's some little Italians with guns. Here's the areas where they conquered: Ethiopia, Eritrea. This is part of Somalia, Italian Somaliland, Italy, and this little part, that's Albania. Oh my God. Okay, we're going to skirt over to the Soviet Union and check in on our boy Lenin. During the Civil War in Russia, Lenin followed a policy of war communism. you took notes about that. The government controlled most industries and seized grain from peasants to ensure supplies for the army. But when the war was over, peasants began to sabotage the communist program by hoarding all the food. Moreover, a drought caused a terrible famine between 1920 and 1922. As many as 5 million people died. And with agriculture disaster came industrial collapse by 1921. I mean, the Civil War is still going on. But by 1921, industrial output was only 20% of its 1913 level. Russia was exhausted. There were peasant banners proclaiming, "Down with Lenin and the horse flesh. Give us the Tsar and pork." Leon Trotsky once said, "The country and the government with it were at the very edge of the abyss." However, in March 1921, Lenin pulled Russia back from the abyss. He abandoned war communism in favor of his new economic policy, NEP, the NEP. The NEP was a modified version of the old capitalistic system. You can say the bottom half of this slide is a test question. Peasants were allowed to sell their produce openly and keep profit. Retail stores, as well as small industries that employed fewer than 20 workers, could be privately owned and operated for profit. And heavy industry, banking, and mines, however, remained in the hands of the government. That's Lenin. That's peasants getting their grain taken from them. I searched up famine 1920, 1922. This is what I got. That's Lenin some more. All about Lenin. Their use of propaganda. All right, Animal Farm. So, 1922, Lenin and the communists formally created a new state called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, aka the USSR, or Soviet Union for short. By its creation, a revived market and a good harvest ended the famine. Soviet agricultural production climbed to 75% of its pre-war level. Overall, why is that not red? Mr. Ovalle caught lacking. Okay, overall, the NEP did save the Soviet Union from complete economic disaster. However, Lenin intended the NEP to only be a temporary retreat from the goals of communism. You guys understand that during the Civil War, Lenin used communism, and it wasn't going well during the Civil War. So he uses capitalism. He lets some principles of capitalism into his new communist state. Just thought I'd, sprinkle some drama in there. Because again, capitalism and communism do not like each other. Long story short, Lenin will die in 1924, 2 years after the Civil War is over. So a struggle began among the 7 members of the Politburo, the Communist Party's main policymaking body, and they were severely divided over the future direction of the Soviet Union. One group was led by Leon Trotsky. He wanted to end the NEP, launch Russia on a path of rapid industrialization at the expense of the peasants. This group wanted to spread communism abroad and believed that a revolution in Russia would only survive with new communist states nearby. The other group, another group in the Politburo, geez, I can't say that word, rejected this idea of worldwide communist revolution. Instead, this group wanted to focus on building a socialist state in Russia and continue Lenin's NEP. This group believed that rapid industrialization would harm the living standards of the peasants. But it's Russia, the Soviet Union. Of course, peasants will struggle. Come on now. That's Lenin near death. And that's Lenin on his deathbed. He is actually embalmed to this day. The Russian government spends thousands of dollars to keep his skin and body preserved in the Red Square in Moscow. You can go see it. You can't take pictures because flash will alter the state of his embalmed body. Crazy, right? 1919, 1922. So he's been dead. 1924. He's been dead 100 years. There are probably some like, what do you call it? Newspaper articles talking about 100 years after Lenin's death. I just thought I'd pop in and say something like that. That's Leon Trotsky. Plotting. Oh, who's that man? Wario. It's giving cultish. These divisions were further strained by an intense personal rivalry between Leon Trotsky and another Politburo member, Joseph Stalin. By 1927, Stalin will actually have the upper hand, and by this time, he will have removed Trotsky and several other Bolsheviks from the Communist Party and government who did not support him. Trotsky fled the country and would be murdered years later, most likely on Stalin's orders in Mexico. With Trotsky and most of the old Bolsheviks out of the way, Stalin was free to establish a powerful dictatorship. He seized all power for himself, greatly curtailed the freedom of the press. And now no one could oppose him or speak out against his policies. Stalin maintained a, quote, cult of personality test question by using media and propaganda, creating a heroic, idealized image. The press presented Stalin as a powerful, all-knowing leader and the father of the people of the Soviet Union. Stalin made a significant shift in economic policy in 1928 when he ended the NEP, and that year he launched his first 5-year plan. His 5-year plan set economic goals for 5 years, and their purpose was to transform Russia virtually overnight from an agricultural to an industrial economy. The first 5-year plan focused on production of military and capital goods. This plan quadrupled the production of heavy machinery and doubled oil production. During 1928 and 1937, during the first 2 5-year plans, steel production in Russia increased from 4 million to 18 million tons per year. Crazy. That's Stalin. Here's his cult. Everyone's smiling at him, and then you got Lenin in the background, paying homage to his homie. And then you got Stalin, everyone's smiling. You got Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, Lenin, Stalin. Okay, the cost of progress. The social and political costs of industrialization were enormous. The number of workers increased by millions from 1932 to 1940, but investment in housing actually declined after 1929. Depression. The result was that millions of workers and families lived in miserable conditions. Obvi. Real wages of industrial workers declined by 43% from 1928 to 1940. So, yeah, not good. With rapid industrialization came equally rapid collectivization of agriculture, a system in which private farms were to be eliminated, and instead government owned all the land and the peasants worked it. These peasants resisted by hoarding crops, killing livestock, aka, and also like destroying tractors and machine equipment for machines, whatever. In response, Stalin stepped up this program. By 1934, 26 million family farms have been collectivized into 250,000 units. Collectivization was done at a tremendous cost. Hoarding food and slaughtering livestock will lead to widespread famine again. The Ukraine region was the center of this famine. Estimates range from 2.4 million to 7.5 million Ukrainian deaths out of 10 million. Some scholars believe this famine to be a deliberate move from Stalin. It's called the Terror Famine, and it was meant to cripple the movement for Ukrainian independence. It's almost like Stalin knew that the peasants were going to react this way, and he let them do it anyways, and it's going to hurt Ukraine. Ukraine is called the breadbasket of the Soviet Union. So a lot of wheat. Wheat is the easiest form of grain, food to make for the poor. And when you don't got the bread, quite literally, you starve to death. I don't speak Russian, but, I looked up terror famine. Again, famine. Not a lot of food to go around. Drought, all that. Yeah, people working on collectives. All right, the purge is real. So Stalin's programs had other costs as well. To achieve his goals, Stalin strengthened his control over the party and freely violated human rights. Those who resisted Stalin were sent into forced labor camps called gulags in eastern Russia, Siberia. During this time known as the Great Purge, Stalin expelled numerous people from all aspects of Soviet life. This is going to have complications when World War II comes around. Many people were publicly shamed in elaborate show trials that were meant to display guilt rather than to determine innocence. The members of Soviet society affected by the purges included army officers, diplomats, union officials, intellectuals, artists, engineers, non-Russians, Jews, members of the Communist Party suspected of disloyalty, and even ordinary citizens. About 8 million people were arrested and sent to gulags, and they were never returned, while others would be executed. The Stalin era also overturned permissive legal social legislation enacted in the early 20s. To promote equal rights for women, communists had made the divorce process easier, but after Stalin came to power, family would be praised as a small collective, and parents were responsible for teaching the values of hard work, duty, and discipline to their children. So if you were married, couldn't divorce. Not that purge. This purge. I think those are dead bodies. And those are people looking at the dead bodies. Here you have, 6 people hung? And then, oh, this picture doesn't look well. But they're all pointing guns at people. If you think Call of Duty in the Gulag war zone, you guys know. And all these are gulags, a gulag map. Look how many gulags there are. Sheesh. Here's a gulag. There's a gulag. That's a YouTube video. All right, other authoritarian places. A number of governments in the Western world were not totalitarian, but authoritarian. These states adopted some features of totalitarian states, like their use of police powers. However, these authoritarian governments did not want to create a new kind of mass society. They just wanted to preserve the existing social order. At first, it seemed that political democracy would become well established in Eastern Europe after World War I. Austria, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Romania, Bulgaria, and Hungary all adopted parliamentary systems. However, authoritarian regimes soon replaced all of these systems. Parliamentary systems failed in most Eastern European Eastern European states for several reasons. These states had little tradition of political democracy and are mostly rural and agrarian. Large landowners still dominated most of the land, and powerful landowners, the churches, and even some members of small middle class feared land reform. They also feared communist upheaval and ethnic conflict. These groups looked to authoritarian governments to maintain the old system. Only Czechoslovakia, which had a large middle class, a liberal tradition, and a strong industrial base, maintained its political democracy. All right, Spanish fascism. In Spain, political democracy also failed to survive. Led by General Francisco Franco, Spanish military forces revolted against the democratic government in 1936, and a brutal and bloody civil war began. Is there any such civil war not brutal or bloody? Foreign intervention complicated the Spanish Civil War. The fascist regimes of Italy and Germany aided Franco's forces with arms, money, and soldiers. Hitler used the Spanish Civil War as an opportunity to test the new weapons of his revived air force. German bombers destroyed the city of Guernica in April 1937. The Spanish Republican government was aided by 40,000 foreign volunteers. The Soviet Union sent in trucks, planes, tanks, military advisors. However, the Spanish Civil War came to an end when Franco's forces captured Madrid in 1939. Franco would establish a dictatorship that lasted until his death in 1975. Because Franco's dictatorship favored traditional groups and did not try to control every aspect of people's lives, it is an example of an authoritarian regime rather than a totalitarian one. Nevertheless, his rule was harsh, and he relied on special police forces, and his opponents who did not flee into exile would be imprisoned. Sounds like a fun guy. Here's some political cartoons. Here you have the highest cause. Whoever recognizes you, I hope will recognize me. What does that say? Reconstitution? Does that say? I can't read upside down, but you get it. Mercy is asking, pleading with Franco to stop. Here you got for the liberty and freedom of Spain. Here you got someone in trouble. And that is going to conclude our lecture today. So it was a little longer, but hey, a lot of things happen. A lot of big moves by these big three or big four. So as you saw, we're going to be talking about Hitler in our next lecture. So I know a lot of people get excited for Hitler. Don't know why. So yeah, that's going to end the lecture. Your homework is page 378, 2 through 4, 378, 2 through 4, 2, 3, and 4. And yeah, not much else to do than the sign off. So hopefully you guys did enjoy that. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.